February 22nd, 2024 marks 2 years since Pokemon TCG Live launched in beta in Canada. That date also happens to be 2 years and 3 months after Fusion Strike Code Card said it was available now. While Live has since exited beta, though somehow still not for expanded players, what exactly has changed in the past 2 years? The best place to start is by looking at gameplay from way back in 2022. This is when the avatars were constantly on screen, breathing and pulsing and always watching you and blinking at you, and if one of the players used an emote, they'd get out of sync and become even creepier. It's also several months before the devs hit the 3x button on gameplay speed. Yeah, if you didn't play PTCGL during those early beta days, you don't know pain. We were literally stuck with this for longer than a football season. I know some people will try to defend the shape PTCGL was in at launch because it's a beta, but remember, the higher-ups at the Pokemon Company expected this to be ready in November 2021, and this is what we got in February 2022. Fast forward to today. The gameplay is much faster, the avatars are hidden, sometimes the game will show you when things are shuffled back into the deck, and even though I choose to turn them off because of how distracting and seizure-inducing they can be, there are board effects. The reason this video isn't a 40-minute long epic going over everything wrong with PTCGL is simple. As this commenter on a recent video pointed out, I am merely a shill for the Pokemon Company paid off to never say anything negative about the game. Also, my video doing just that from this time last year is still far too relevant. While there have been a few changes here and there, for the most part, Live is the same. The developers are still adding visual effects no one asked for, like the little poop when you flip a coin. There's still a host of bugs that turn off new players and make older players such as myself yearn for the days of PTCGO, and a new set launch has as much chance of breaking something old as it does introducing brand new issues that take months to fix. Nothing exemplifies the state of the game better than this error message. For 2 weeks following the launch of Paldean Fates, PTCGL wouldn't let you in without telling you how broken it is. And in that time frame, there was no direct communication from the developers. No tweet, no letter, no forum post. In fact, it appears they deleted the dedicated webpage for developer letters and will probably now just post them on the forums. Then, following some more issues with Live, they gave us a new message blocking you from entering the game like a Snorlax. This time telling you they fixed the issues. Except that message remained up for 5 days, reminding us that the developers don't play their own game, otherwise they would have noticed this and removed it. After playing Live for a few weeks following the release of Paldean Fates, it's obvious that the update broke some things on the back end. I've had numerous issues with cards simply disappearing, including Lost City hiding underneath a Path to the Peak, and Golden Go being shuffled back into my deck when Iona was played. And players are reporting more problems than normal in the last few weeks, such as the game placing 30 prize cards due to constant disconnecting and reconnecting, and people being able to attack with stadiums. If you go on the forums, there's no official mention of these massive problems plaguing PTCGL. In fact, we went a month without any official announcements from the devs. But on February 16th, we learned that a new update would go live just in time for the 2-year anniversary of Live. So what have they been working on the last month, and what have they been planning for this major milestone? If you guessed nothing, and also making an unnecessary visual change, you'd be right. After the typical 8 hours of planned maintenance, PTCGL is getting a new confusion effect. Players running Android 8 or lower won't be able to access the game anymore. And they're fixing the issue where you couldn't evolve on the second turn after using Medicham V's Yoga Loop. That Medicham bug was reported back in November, and it doesn't happen every time, but it's definitely annoying when it does. But that's not the full story about Yoga Loop. Remember when I said a new update has a good chance of breaking something else? Back in December, an update fixed a long-standing issue where you couldn't use Squawkabilly EX in sudden death on turn 1. In fixing that, they created a new issue where you can now use Squawkabilly EX on back-to-back turns after Yoga Loop. A fix for that was not included in these latest patch notes. It could still be fixed as a byproduct of the evolution fix, but not mentioning it means they aren't specifically targeting it. So as you can probably tell, the level of communication from the dev team is still as bad as it was. But there is reason to be hopeful. Since 2024 began, the Pokemon Company International has made an increased effort to reach out to the community. I myself was given codes by TPCI to hand out to viewers, and they even acknowledged the PTCGL subreddit. That's awesome! Interacting with players is critical to any live service game. But of course, I have to be a dweeby downer and darken the mood. Yes, this added level of communication is nice to see, but PTCGL is 2 years old and nothing of magnitude has improved. So until we see any major changes in live, I'll be regarding this with a "that's nice" and moving on with my day like I normally would, soaking my feet in a tub of lotion while playing Pokemon cards live on Twitch for at least 6 hours a week. You'll notice that nowhere up to this point in the video have I talked about actually new features in live. So you know what that means. It's time for TrustYourPilot to whip it out and show you how PTCGL compares to PTCGO. After 730 days of existence, TCG Live has added a total of 0 new features that PTCGO had. You still can't tell who's going first after the coin flip, there's still no game log, though that is coming this year, there's still no true expanded mode or expanded friend battles. As a result, there's no GLC. The filters when viewing your collection are missing key things like retreat cost and attack cost. They shut down the Card Decks app, which had these, in order to devote even more resources to PTCGL, and you still can't mute your opponent, so they can spam emotes endlessly and there's nothing you can do about it. It feels crazy to say this, but after 2 years, PTCGL only has one game mode not in beta. Yeah, standard is split into ranked and casual, but you go into casual and tell me that's not just ranked 2.0. One game mode. After 2 years. It blows my mind like a blacephalon. I mean, look at PTCGO. At the time it was shuttered forever, there was theme, standard, expanded, legacy, in-game tournaments, and you could easily do GLC and friend battles. Not to mention crazy user-friendly features like knowing who's going first, muting your annoying opponent, and being able to take off the shoes of your avatar to reveal the whole foot, not a partial foot obstructed by the strap of a sandal. Compared to another card game like Magic Arena, PTCGL's offerings are absolutely abysmal. I can't even count the number of modes Arena has. I'm not a huge Magic fan these days, but I play for a couple of weeks each time there's a new set. Why? Because drafting is so much fun. The Pokemon TCG has its own draft format in the form of pre-releases, yet after 2 years, all we've heard is that maybe expanded is probably coming soon. I would be so happy with a pre-release format you could enter in PTCGL and keep the cards from, but that feels like years down the line if it ever even happens. And what about GLC? It was never an official format in PTCGO, but people still played it a ton. For GLC to come to live, we have to A, get expanded, and B, have friend battles added to expanded. And again, we still don't have an ETA on expanded exiting beta, just like we didn't have an ETA 2 years ago. Oh, and PTCGL has numerous issues with the limited card pool currently on offer. Adding Black and White and X and Y puts like 2,000 new cards into the mix. The players definitely aren't letting the Pokemon Company off easy. After 27,000 reviews on Android, Pokemon TCG Live is sitting at a 2.4 out of 5, with the vast majority of recent reviews talking about how it freezes simply trying to boot it up. I can't even begin to describe how bad a 2.4 is for any mobile game, let alone a game with the Pokemon name on it. But we've just kind of been forced to accept it because PTCGO's gone and the alternative is going outside and interacting with other people if we want to play Pokemon cards. Gross. Ironically, a 2.4 is actually higher than what Live has been in the past. There's been times where it was under 2. I know I already made a video about this, but the developer letter at the very end of December talked about how they're continuing to make improvements to the stability, and they've already seen a reduction in the number of issues when booting the game up. Again, all of these things should have happened more than 2 years ago before the game was launched, and before the superior Pokemon Online card game was said to be shutting down, but we're stuck with Live, so any improvements are welcome. Thankfully, the community isn't about letting such a great card game flounder due to Pokemon TCG Live. Pokemon.gg recently decided to show off what Live could look like with customizable boards. $1 billion company didn't give us this, someone in their spare time did, and it's an improvement over what we currently have. Then we have the George R.R. Martin of the Pokemon TCG world Twinleaf, which is still coming. Joe, the lead developer, posts consistent updates about Twinleaf on Twitter, showing off how they've improved simple effects that PTCGL overcomplicates. The best example of this is Gardevoir EX. Every time you attach an energy with Gardevoir on PTCGL, the game takes a break to place the damage counters before allowing you to continue, which takes several seconds. On Twinleaf, it will place the damage counters after you finish using the ability. Or with Sablei's Lost Mine, you click a plus button to add damage counters. No more clicking and dragging and making sure you click and drag super fast, because if you're too slow, PTCGL will time you out and any leftover damage counters won't get placed. Honestly, if you're looking for hope about the future of the Pokemon TCG online, I'd recommend following Joe, not the actual Pokemon TCG account. They're constantly posting updates about Twinleaf. If you're unfamiliar, Twinleaf is going to be a Pokemon TCG simulator, sort of like what Pokemon Showdown is for VGC, and talking about how your feedback is shaping the release of the game. It's honestly impressive how quickly they're able to implement cards that aren't even out yet, and they've even put in cards from sets not available in live. I know this video is just me ranting about PTCGL, but that's what you came here for, isn't it? To listen to the longest tenured PTCGL streamer reveal just how far his mental state has deteriorated after playing this game for the past 2 years. The one good thing about sacrificing my sanity is that I've noticed some things well-adjusted people haven't. For instance, and this is just another example of the corners the developers cut, check out the end screen of the game. You see that winner banner that appears over the winner's name? Yeah, that's always there, hiding behind both players' names. Instead of it appearing out of nowhere, PTCGL just raises the winner's banner. Or how about how clicking on Show Not Owned in your collection shows you cards you still own, because PTCGL treats arts of cards you don't own as cards you don't own, so crafting cards you don't have any copies of requires you to scroll through every card and look for a 0. It was also a conscious decision to stray away from just listing all of the bugs that are in PTCGL. This would have been an 8-hour video if I did. But if you want an example of how bad things still are just in terms of card interactions, let me point you towards Radiant Charizard. Back in September 2023, it was reported that Radiant Charizard was unaffected by Pokemon League headquarters, likely because priority is handled oddly in live. Fast forward to January 2024, and the same issue happens with his Pathra EX, and the developers still haven't even acknowledged that the problem exists. Or what about the issue with friend battles? Yep, that's still a thing. If you're in a limitless tournament and battle someone new, you basically have to restart the game in order for them to show up in your friends list. The alternative is waiting 2 to 5 minutes, but there's always a chance the game completely breaks if you don't restart. In fairness, there are things that haven't changed, which is for the better. You still get 2 new free decks with each battle pass, plus a few thousand credits. And the addition of crafting and removal of tradings is overall still a huge improvement over PTCGO. I can honestly say that I haven't missed the PTCGO trading post one bit. But it would have been so much easier to simply add free decks to PTCGO than, create an entirely new game. So how has PTCGL evolved in the past 2 years? The gameplay is sped up, and most of the time it doesn't break as much, but it still breaks more than it should. The second of 2 game modes is still in beta, and mobile players are still giving it 1 out of 5 stars at an alarming rate. But we'll be getting a basic PTCGO feature within the next 10 months, which is something, I guess.